Untangling Life. I'm your co-host Hattie Willis, and with me the ever amazing Andy Aim.
Too kind, isn't she?
But I do want to focus on the how you amazing are. And I want to keep that in because I think this is important. This episode is about humans. Humans make errors. As I definitely just demonstrated
That's how
on
you know it's
purpose.
not AI.
Yeah, exactly. You know you're listening to the real Hattie because she can't say words. But what we want to talk today about is how amazing humans are, because we live in a world where we are all, I think, well, I'm having an existential crisis whenever I think about AI too long. And is it coming for all of our jobs? Where is the value going to sit? And so this episode, we really wanted to dive into the skills that we don't believe will ever be replaced by AI.
Can I start with a contrarian thought first?
Yes, always.
Okay, love a bit of contrarian controversy.
Ooh.
I listened to an interview the other day with a founder called Ari Emanuel, who runs WME Group, which is a talent agency and a live events business, and they own like WWE and what's that fighting thing called again? UFC.
Okay.
And I love the way that he pictured this, and he said that actually the live events business is almost in the opposite direction of AI. Because the more and more we fascinate ourselves with AI and technological advances, the more we value this premium experience of a live experience of a person and a human. So that's why the live Premier League matches or, WWE events, like you want to watch it because you appreciate the storytelling, the emotions and the experience of human to human life. And our workshops are actually the same, Hattie.
Yeah.
Like we are in the business of live events.
Agreed.
And actually, people really find it a premium experience when they can put down their smartphones and put down their laptops and come and be human and connect in new and interesting ways. And we provide that experience as facilitators.
I also think I just did a workshop last night, and one of the things I do have to fight is my instinct to judge my workshops based on how funny I think people think I am. But personally, I think I'm a hoot. And part of that comes from in a session live, particularly when you have real people, you can ad lib and pick up on things and be sparky,
human
in a way. But you've got this repository of stories to draw on. So I think that's really hard to replace that same personality.
Yeah.
But interestingly, I know we talked about earlier, AI is, non-errors. And I'm seeing this trend on LinkedIn at the moment where if you want to do better on LinkedIn, people are starting to add back in errors, add back in missing words, typos, etc. So they look more human.
That's so
because
weird,
people are
isn't it?
being drawn to that because actually we are a bit over the AIification of content. So I think there is this whole trend of we're already missing the humanity of a lot of this. So I think there is a world where we are going to start valuing that more, but it's still quite hard to tell what's real. If you talk to ChatGPT conversationally, it will add in ums and ahs.
Yeah.
If you listen to it speak.
Interesting.
So it sounds more human. Terrifying.
I never even realised that.
It's really scary. I spotted it. And I thought about it for public speaking workshops because we teach that a lot. But so in a world where more and more things are sped up by AI, it is growing at a rate that I genuinely do. I mean, there's a lot of disagreement about how fast it is now improving compared to maybe.
It is rapid.
I think it's still growing at an insane rate, the capability.
Every 6 months, I see a massive difference in the capabilities.
I don't even know if it's every 6.
It's shorter than that.
I think
You're
it's
right.
shorter.
You're right.
And so I think there is a world where we are rightly terrified. So maybe we talk a little bit about what we're scared of, because I am genuinely scared that it's going to kill us all.
I heard this quote by a Harvard professor that humans with AI are going to leave behind humans without AI. And I think that's what I'm terrified of, the capability gap between, do you even understand what this is? So, for example, a friend of mine was running a workshop for young people in care homes the other day. And he wanted me to help him with like, what are some AI tools that I can use for media? And I introduced him to like Google VO3, ChatGPT, Sora, and another tool. And it blew his mind, and he'd never come across them. And he was asking me, how do I use them and how do I prompt? And that was the level of proficiency. And actually, he represents the majority of society. Like a lot of people don't know these tools exist, don't know how to write prompts effectively, and therefore are getting left behind by those that do.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that needs to be done at a curriculum level at schools to evolve things pretty quick, not in in favor of examining boards, which is what schools typically do,
Yeah, yeah.
Edexcel and ODR and all of these exam. No, to ensure that these kids are ready for the world that they're stepping into.
Yeah.
It should be integrated in how they do homework. It should be integrated. And at work, even in onboarding experiences, I think we need to define where the boundaries are to say, okay, this is how we want you to use it at work. This is how you can and can't use it for your CV. This is how you can and can't use it in an interview. We need to stop putting it off and start leaning into defining the boundaries around each of these things.
And so I agree with all of that. And I'm terrified that we're all going to use it so much that we don't have brains. Because there are studies already that are showing the diminishing neural function that comes from, like, you can literally see a map of the brain before and after using AI, and it is lighting up a lot less when we've used AI.
I think I saw something similar with social media and attention, and how attention spans have gone from like 15 seconds down to 7 seconds because of social media. And I think AI is actually accelerating human behavior that we already start to see with social media, where
100%.
instead of critically thinking, we're seeing the first thing that we see on Twitter and we're going with that opinion like it's a fact, and we're not willing to do research. And AI is making that worse because people get an answer from AI, they won't fact check it, they won't do research, they won't look at the pros and cons. They're looking for the quickest, most efficient answer.
Critical thinking being, I think, the first skill actually that I want to see taught around AI, that isn't just about how do I use AI, but how do I keep my critical thought?
Yeah.
Because I think, and there's some basic stuff around getting AI to tell you where its sources are from and checking them.
Yeah.
But
I
actually,
even think there's a step before that.
yeah, which is?
I think when I am researching something like would AI replace my job? I was searching YouTube, I was searching Google, I was searching ChatGPT, I was searching in podcast players, and I would amalgamate my opinion based on all of what I get, TikTok, Instagram, and it might take me half an hour, but I'll do research across all of those platforms before having an informed opinion.
Yes. Okay. So, like, actually, getting it to cite its own sources, but then having other sources that you're relying on.
100%.
I think that's so true. And we're just not, so I get worried that we're not teaching kids any critical thought around it. And it's something, so we're working a lot with kids across our different programs. We work with them in universities, we're working with them in schools.
Yeah.
And we are definitely trying to build in how to use AI, because it is epic for being able to show kids that they can actually build things at a pace they never thought possible, at a cost that was never possible before. So actually, even if you can't fundraise because you don't have friends and family who can give you money, get a product live so much faster if it's a tech product especially, and so much cheaper. So I'm really excited about it, and I want to show it to kids, and I love watching their faces light up, and I love watching what they build. But I also don't want them to lose the ability to generate ideas, to sense check their own ideas, to actively look for blind spots that the tools might not be showing them.
Yeah.
And I get worried that, I think it's all a balance, right? Of how much do we, I think you're right. There is a continuous learning piece that we have to, if we want to keep, employed, I think we have to stay on top of their stuff. But also, if we're not nurturing the other skills, we will lose them.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And when I think of kids in schools and my daughter, for example, one thing that I do love is that I've known for years that one-to-one tuition is a premium and a privilege, but it accelerates like unlocking human
100%.
potential and potential in kids because they're operating at their capacity, always being stretched.
Yeah.
But not everyone can afford it.
100%.
And one thing that AI does help to do is bring that one-to-one tuition closer.
100%.
And I do love that aspect of it.
Yeah.
My worry is less about kids and more about humans in general and adults more.
Yeah.
Around our need to be efficient and to do things quick. And I'm worried about that because I feel like if that continues, we're not going to slow down and do the research. We're not going to look for the pros and cons. We're not going to look for both sides of an argument. We're just always going to look for the quickest, easiest thing to do. And that's what productivity pushes you towards.
I also think that is just human behavior. I think if you look back over history, that is what people always want. There's a it's not even a historical book, but there's a brilliant book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow.
Yeah, Daniel Kahneman.
See, I never know names. Brilliant. And it's great because it talks actually about the kind of primal need to be very quick in deciding, is this going to kill me? Is it food? Is it not food? We can't be spending all of our effort. I need to be able to respond to certain threats very quickly. And then there is longer thinking I need to be able to do. But I think to your point, we're losing the ability to think slow.
Yeah. And even when I think about the UK as an economy
Mm.
and a country, I think we're in such an interesting time because along our careers, we've had this like financial crisis
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of us learned that this financial system is actually like built on a house of cards. But that's a lot of how we made money
Yeah.
here in the UK. And since that time actually of austerity and that crash, we actually haven't figured out a new economy yet. We haven't figured out like how is the UK going to be productive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even with AI, we're China and the US are the front runners when we're talking about
Yeah.
AI. Manufacturing, we're not a front runner. So I think the UK is in a really interesting place where we actually need to slow down and think about how do we get the economy going again? How do we upskill a nation? How do we get the
Mm.
UK being a growth story that's really exciting? And I think we're literally backed in a corner now where we have no choice but to start thinking this through at a deeper level.
But I think it actually strikes me as kind of a great analogy for a lot of life is that in order to run faster, we have to walk slower first.
Yeah,
And we're so bad at that as humans again, because and
100%.
it feels like I think AI in general is a giant prisoner's dilemma of I'm not going to stop because you're not going to stop.
Yeah, so true.
And so there is this fear of if I slow down, someone worse is going to build something
Yeah.
with less controls, or we're going to be more reliant on someone else, and that's going to have economic but also political issues attached. I mean, it is all quite existential and quite scary.
And I feel like a lot of companies are using AI like an excuse.
Ooh.
Like I saw a lot of big tech companies, Meta, Google, Salesforce, even UBS and other companies outside of tech, talk about how they got rid of a lot of like middle managers actually mainly like
Mm,
these managers were managing just teams of three.
yeah.
So that we got rid of them. But you set it up for them to manage teams of three. That wasn't an AI issue. That was your
Yeah.
fault. That was your system. That's your organization. But I feel like they're using AI as a crutch now, almost like a get out of jail card free, a free
Mm,
card. Um, and especially with the manager situation, the reason it obviously irks me is because I do a lot of work in that space, as do you.
yeah.
And we know that like a lot of the times these were individual contributors that were really great at digital marketing and then got promoted as almost like a reward. And then
Mm,
they inherited people management, but they didn't even really want to manage people. They just wanted more money and more status.
yeah.
And now companies are just
Naturally.
saying, do you know what? We're making things more efficient.
Yeah.
We're cutting costs, and therefore we're cutting out these managers, and then we're investing more in AI and technology.
But there is also I do need us to apply a little bit of like medium even term thinking, because we're cutting so many entry level jobs. We're cutting quite a lot of mid level jobs.
Mm,
Where is anyone going to get the experience to do the jobs that we still do want them to do?
mm.
Because currently there are less and less ways to have careers in the early stages where you get that messy, muddy experience that you need to then do a good job later on.
Do you know, I'm torn between two
Oh,
things.
tell.
One is we need a government to really invest and set up environments where we're investing more in entrepreneurs.
Seconded.
Entrepreneurship gets the and your work and even your school's challenge is a good example of that. We
Mm,
actually need to kickstart entrepreneurship and support entrepreneurs in the early stages
yeah.
because they are value creators, they create jobs, and they contribute to the economy. I'm
Yes.
speaking your language.
I will sign your petition.
Yes. Vote for you for mayor.
Change.org. Oh yeah, I would.
No, I wouldn't hate to be mayor.
Oh.
So I think on the one hand, we need to kickstart that. On the
Mm,
other hand, we need to reframe careers as you're getting paid to learn. Because young people
yeah.
coming out of university or like looking to go into careers now are increasingly just turning to entrepreneurship straight away. And part of that is because I don't think they value what you can learn from being in a company.
Yeah.
Stakeholder management, email etiquette, relationship building, bureaucracy and politics, just so I understand how things work. Selling into a big company, how does it operate? What does a marketing department do versus a HR department versus sales versus finance? I think there's actually a lot of real valuable lessons that you can get from working a career or in a company that a lot of people
Mm.
undervalue who haven't experienced it yet. I'm making a generalization
I
here.
hugely agree. And I think part of the challenge is they're not getting those opportunities to learn in the way that we did. So
Mm,
when I was coming up in my career, I mean, I went there, and I often say this to students because we get asked a lot by university students, should I just start a startup straight out of uni?
mm,
And I tend to have two approaches. One is, well, it is the time in your life when you have the least to risk,
Which is true.
and you're responsible for the least. So in lots of ways, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have kids, like great time to do it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, maybe it is worth getting a bit of experience first that isn't just everything is trial by fire. So I often recommend, going and joining something that is genuinely focused on innovation, where there's a speed of movement and learning that you can learn at a pace that's exciting to you. But I do think that's what I did. I joined out of uni. I joined a series of startups in the really early stages, and then I went and worked for an innovation consultancy where I was very close to the partner who ran the UK office. And by very close, I mean I was the first hire in. I
Mm.
sat with him in every meeting for the first year.
Soaking up knowledge, yeah.
I mean, I got to do things I had no right to be doing. I got to ask
Yeah.
questions I definitely had no right to be asking. And I got exposure at a level that was outrageous. But that gave me the learning. And even if you're not able to do that with the partner of the company,
Yeah.
normally you're able to sit with someone and you're able to sit in on meetings. And there is, I think, this diffusion of learning that happens
Just being
so
around it.
softly, and it is getting lost. And I'm not a fan of forcing everyone back into the office. I think
Yeah, no, you
that
just
is,
got me thinking about hybrid
that horse is
work
gone.
and
Like, let's not like.
yeah, but
Let,
fully remote, you lose a lot of that tactile.
so how are we designing for it? Because
Yeah.
I think we're often defeatist about this, where we kind of go, oh, I either need everyone back in the office or nothing's going to work, or oh, we're hybrid, so we just can't expect the same outcomes. We've got to design for them.
I think the problem is that companies are not intentionally designing
Mm.
purpose in the office. The reason you come into the office isn't to sit on Zoom all day. The reason is so that you have come and get this learning experience, this social experience. We're going to create this fun activity. So you're coming into the office with purpose rather than feeling like I'm more productive at home and therefore I want to stay at home and do most of my work so I don't get disturbed.
But also, we're expecting everyone to take on a higher and higher and higher and higher workload because
Yeah.
most companies now have hiring freezes. They've let a load of people go. They have hiring freezes in place, so everyone is completely understaffed that I'm speaking to, and so your workload is suddenly, frankly, higher than it should be.
Yeah.
You're then being told, come into the office and come to this fun learning experience, and you're
Yeah.
going, sure, but my to-dos are piling up. I'm on back-to-back Zoom calls the rest of the time, so there's no time to work. And so I do think we need to look at a fundamental. I mean, I agree with you. I think we need a fundamental kind of nationwide redesign, but we also need a redesign at a company level
I agree.
to fit this. And I don't think anyone's found the model yet.
I think we're starting to touch on some of the
Mm.
timeless skills.
Yeah.
So I think one is designing for experiences at a company level, at a nation level, and at an individual level. How do we think through the lens of designing for an experience? And that doesn't matter how much or how little AI you're using. It's what is the experience that I'm designing for, and what is the feeling that I want someone to feel at the end of that experience.
And how are we measuring that feeling, right? Because
Yeah.
I think one of the increasing skills that is going to be irreplaceable is our ability to actually get to the heart of how someone feels about something.
Yeah.
Whether that's a customer, whether that's an employer,
Absolutely.
whether that's an employee, whether it's a colleague.
Evergreen.
Yeah. What is my ability to genuinely connect to your experience at a deep enough level that I understand it, that I just don't think you can get from a survey, from a, you know,
Yeah.
quantitative data.
I agree with that. Another skill that came to mind is problem solving skills.
Mm.
Like you and I learned this method of design thinking when you think about a problem, you think about different challenges and angles to that problem, you ideate on different potential
Yeah.
solutions, you shortlist, you test, you prototype.
Mhm.
But it's a problem solving framework that we've
Yeah.
used in practice time and time again. And we teach it so often. But problem solving is a timeless skill. We're going to
100%.
need that forever. Because if you just ask AI questions and you get answers, but you can't interrogate it, then you
Yeah.
haven't got the skills. You haven't got the problem solving skills.
100%. And I think it is linked back to, again, what we're hearing. And I'm gonna say it like I'm hearing it, not because I agree with it, but I'm
Mm,
hearing from a lot of companies quotes like, they just don't make the new generations like they used to.
mm,
As a historian, I know that has been said by every generation
yeah,
going way back.
of course.
But we're hearing it a lot at the moment. Gen Z are lazy. They expect an easy ride. They don't
Yeah,
ever take initiative. But then we go into universities and we're running these programs. It's not what I'm seeing.
yeah, I agree.
You look at Gen Z online, it's not what we're seeing. They don't struggle to take initiative. They're just taking it a different way. And frankly, they either often don't feel safe to do it in your environment. And
Mm,
that's maybe an organizational design issue or a management issue. or you're not actually leveraging the ways in which they're problem solving.
But I think you've even touched on another timeless skill here, which is really shaping mutual learning environments
Yeah.
where it's not reverse mentoring, it's mutual mentoring.
Mm.
I'm learning as a baby boomer as much from you as a Gen Z, and you're learning as a Gen Z just as much from me as a baby boomer.
Mm.
If you create an environment where you take away the power displacement, it enables us to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And we need to create more environments like that, given the intergenerational workforce we have.
And also allows us to get out of because there is this point where when there's this disconnect, we hear more of these like generational stereotypes.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier to generalize about you until suddenly I have a conversation and I know you and I know that in lots of ways you meet that stereotype and in lots of ways you don't.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you're a real person who I have a real relationship with. And so suddenly you're not
Absolutely.
just a lazy Gen Z, you're actually someone who is juggling way more than I did at your age.
Yeah, it's true. And having that empathy.
Yeah, and an existential crisis that I didn't have when I came out of university was much easier to get a job, for
Yeah.
instance.
Another skill that came to mind,
Mm,
we're on a roll here.
yes.
I was writing my newsletter recently and I was sharing some stories of like growing up as a kid. And this theme for the newsletter, I'm not going to spoil it because it's not out yet.
Oof.
It was about attention seeking. And as a kid, if someone was saying, like, Andy, you're attention seeker, it was a negative thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But now in this day and age of social media and stuff, I argue in the newsletter without giving too much away that like I'm not gonna say it without guilt. Like yes, I am attention seeking. But the reason that I
Oh,
mentioned
that's
that
therapy for me to hear, but carry on.
the reason I mentioned that in this context is because um I think there's also an element in this day and age now where we need to be conscious about like actually do we have the skill to stand out in this crowd? And I think storytelling is at the core of that skill. So
100%.
with that newsletter, I was leaning on my personal experience as a kid and my personal experience as an adult. I could ask AI whatever questions I want. It will never know my personal stories. I have to surface that.
Yeah.
So storytelling is going to be a critical skill that I think is going to be a timeless skill.
And I think connected to that, something that AI cannot do is be vulnerable,
Mm.
right? It's very Brené Brown of me, but I do think vulnerable storytelling where we're actually willing, and I don't, by vulnerable storytelling, I don't mean
Yeah.
you have to go into, we've talked a lot about on the podcast about some really vulnerable stuff that
Yeah.
frankly I'm not going to share in other contexts because this is a context in which I feel incredibly safe and comfortable.
Mm.
And that's not always going to be the case. Fine. I'm not asking you to bring your deepest, darkest trauma to every setting. However, I do think there is this point about bringing your vulnerable whole self.
Bring your humanity.
And actually, the more I speak in public, the more I talk online, the more willing I am to be my clumsy, awkward.
Yeah.
I've fallen into a stage. I've smashed a bottle of water live on stage and had to have people cleaning up around me because I wasn't allowed to stop because they didn't want me to, go over time. And poor person's cleaning up my mess literally on the floor around me. I have fluffed every word going. I have said rude words by accident. I've just embarrassed myself so many times. I kind of don't care. And actually, that then frees you to be able to be really authentic and be vulnerable with the stories you tell that maybe don't show you in the best light. Or and actually, I think there is this world where my prediction about where that attention grabbing, attention holding is going to come from is increasingly not going to come from polish or a sense of having everything together.
Yeah.
It's not relatable in
People
this
connect
world.
with that authenticity, isn't it?
I think that's it. And I think it's easy to say in lots of respects, bring your whole self to work, be authentic. Again, I think a lot of this responsibility is mutually shared with the systems that we're designing, so that allows, because it's much easier to be, as I just said, it's much easier to be vulnerable in a setting that you think you're going to be accepted. So there is some systems work to do here to make sure that actually everyone can take these opportunities. But I think that, to me, that's one of the only things that can set us apart from AI is we are real.
I think it's going to lead us into a state where we're more conscious about our data as well.
Mm,
Like having more governance and protection over, I don't want AI to read this, maybe I want it to read that. Just like organizations like newspapers are doing now, or media outlets, like they're being really conscious around like, what do I want AI to access and what don't I want it to access? You know, and I mean, like, if other people are searching, so if Hattie is doing a search right now in Claude about me,
mm.
what is it surfacing to her? And am I comfortable with everything that it surfaces to you?
I I'm such a cynic. I think we're gonna. I think the cat's probably out the bag on that one already.
We're
Uh,
too far down the road.
I mean, like, when was the last time you read a terms and service when you agreed to an update on an app? Like,
Mm.
an app you love, I need to update the agreement. I have no idea what they're asking for. None. And every so often I'll see an Instagram video being like, oh, be careful, Apple's just asked for this. I'm like, oops, already clicked it. Didn't read it. Don't think I'm revealing anything in saying that. I
No,
think this is
it's
all of
true.
us, right?
It's true.
I do think.
There's so many services we wouldn't use if we really read the small print.
And like, sorry, best example of this. Everyone knows. Everyone knows your phone is listening to you. I don't think this is me with a tin hat.
No.
Like, we know.
Yeah.
Everyone has had those times. You've had a conversation. You go onto Google. What is it advertising?
Yeah.
Something
Facebook is
very
the worst of this.
exactly,
Instagram,
all of them.
WhatsApp.
And,
Yeah.
and you know, I've said don't track across apps. I turn off, certain tracking. You know, they are listening to us. All you're listening, iPhone. No, you are. And but we're not changing our behavior because as humans, and I think this is where we need to be real about the skills that are going to stand out for us, because I don't think we can expect that anyone is going to take the path of more resistance and not embrace these tools that make our lives so much easier. I kind of do think
You're too far down the road.
I don't think there's any like putting the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's out. It's fully squeezed. We've literally got to the end and we're now like squeezing the end. So I think we do have to have this conversation. And I think there is a balance, because I don't know about you, I can't think about AI too late at night, or I literally lie awake going, oh my gosh, I think we might be literally, and I'm using it in my day to day. I'm loving it in my day to day, but every time I lie in bed, I'm like, I think we might have maybe ended the world. But I don't not have any hope.
Okay.
And my hope does come from, I do think there are things that we can do if we actively look at how we embrace it to keep some form of agency.
Let's be a bit helpful for our listeners.
Yeah.
What are some helpful skills
Yeah.
to utilize when using AI? How do you make AI work well with you?
Maybe
Based on
let's
your
talk about the prompt
experience?
thing, because I think you raised that as something that lots of
Yeah.
people don't understand.
Can we explain what prompts
Yeah.
are in case someone doesn't understand
Yeah,
what
yeah.
a prompt is? So with a prompt, we're talking about like what you're typing into AI to instruct it. And how you write that out in a particular way will impact your results that you get from AI.
Yeah. And so I think there is this huge democratization of anyone can use ChatGPT. Anyone can, even when you search on Google, it's now surfacing an AI result immediately
AI
with
mode,
Gemini. So we're all doing it pretty much all the time. And there is this world of how good are you? And I used to get really
like, do you type in Google search what you type into AI if you're instructing AI?
no. But then I'm getting an AI result on Google search with Gemini. The irony is, I used to genuinely think, when I used to work at my old company, I used to think one of my best skills I was best at was I was really good at Googling stuff. To the point where I get so pissed off with my colleagues. I love you all, but I would get asked questions and I would just Google it and I'd get them the answer. And I was like, why? And I used to sometimes, I got a bit sassy towards the end. And I was like, have you tried Googling it?
Yeah.
Before you ask me a question, have you tried Googling it? But
do you
often,
think people are going to feel like that with AI? Like, why haven't you searched in AI?
but yes, and I think people had tried Googling it.
Yeah.
But I was actually just quite good at knowing what I needed to Google to get an answer.
Yeah.
And I think AI is the exact same thing. So maybe we could walk through what are the good ingredients for a prompt what should we be thinking about?
Context. Framing is really important.
What do you mean by that? So, like, should we work through an example?
Let's work through an example.
What should our example be?
I want to design a workshop for 16 to 19-year-olds around like learning about entrepreneurship.
Well, let's pick even an example that someone at home could use. Sorry, I'm taking it only because I think actually someone might want to use this. Let's link it to our financial mindset episode.
Okay.
And let's say I want to make a personal budget. Because I
Nice.
feel like that actually is someone you could listen along and do this live.
Nice. What? Okay, so let's set what context is important for AI to know in order to help you create a
I
financial
love it.
budget. A first piece of context.
Yeah.
I haven't got a finance degree or
Hmm.
finance background,
Nice. Love it.
so I need this to be simple.
Great. The other thing I might say is like, how am I planning to use it? So
Yep.
I want to be able to create a budget that I can use to work out how to save better, work out how much I have to spend every month. Like, what am I going to try and do with this?
Yes. And I don't know how to use any systems like Excel or Google Sheets, so I
Brilliant.
just need to be something simple that I can use from here.
Brilliant. The other things I would definitely include if it was for me, I get quite financially nervous. So I'm going to find this process stressful. Please, can you help me make it as unstressful as possible and make sure you explain things so that I don't feel stupid, but also don't make me feel guilty for the process. This is what I said, by the way, the first time I went to see a
Yeah.
financial advisor. I said all of this to them.
Great. Can you also make it in Great British pounds? Because I know you tend to use US with me.
Mm,
And can you also just do the budget for the next 6 months, just so I can see how it could work?
nice.
These are categories that really matter to me.
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z. Shopping,
Love it.
utility bills,
Yeah.
depending on what you do.
The other things I think are often important to put in a quote are tell it outright. Please feel free to ask me clarifying questions before you get started.
That last line there, game changer. Because what happens is you get frustrated because it actually asks you questions. But if you didn't put that last line, it wouldn't ask you those clarifying questions, which is really annoying.
And then it's rubbish and I'm having to ask them all
Yeah.
anyway.
When AI responds and asks you clarifying
Mm.
questions, do you voice note your response back or do you type your
I
response
do both
back?
actually. I do sometimes voice note and I sometimes type.
Because
And I
something
do
that
the same for the
frustrates me
prompt.
with the voice noting is
Mm.
that if it asks me 4 questions, I might voice note the first part and I actually want to voice note the next and the next,
Yeah.
but it doesn't allow you to do that. It's like
Yeah.
you have a voice note and answer to all of it.
Mm.
It doesn't allow you to go one at a time unless you clarify that and say, I'm just answering the first question. Don't respond. Let me do the
Yeah, you have to
second.
really
You have to be very,
be
but that's
very
how you learn how
specific.
to play with it and learn the
Yeah.
boundaries.
The other thing we haven't done that's really good practice is to give it a role. So tell
Mm,
it, are
I
you,
don't do that often enough, you
it's
know.
really helpful.
You're a ghostwriter, you're a financial advisor in this
Yeah, are
case,
you a
wealth
financial
manager.
advisor? Are you do you want to be my partner making our household budget together?
Yeah,
You know, what lens are we going
it's
through?
true actually.
Yeah, and you could even say to it like, I want you to imagine there's this lovely YouTube channel where there's this oh, so beautiful. There's this man who um decided to be the dad for lots of people who didn't have a dad who they could go to for lots of the
You've
things that you would
told me about this
traditionally
guy
go to.
before, yeah.
And so he does lots of DIY videos and lots of things that stereotypically you would go to your dad. Beautiful. And so, but you could even say to it, like, right, I want you to pretend that you're a parent and give me great parental advice. You can pick the role and play.
But then sometimes when you go down this road
Mm.
and AI has a memory, do you feel like the memory can actually turn annoying because it's remembering things and bringing it up time and time again? And you're like, okay, you're doing my head in now. I know you're trying to be positive. I know you're always trying to encourage me, but
Well,
this is enough now.
I do get annoyed with the sycophantic nature of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, if you haven't noticed already, if you talk to it, it will always immediately praise you. What a great question, Hattie. The best question anyone on this platform's ever asked me. You're such a genius.
So American.
Yeah, it's quite American. And so you can tell it not to. I find the memory is helpful
For
for
specific
certain things.
things.
You can also tell it like, I don't want you to act in that way. Or you can also
Yeah.
tell it, don't remember anything from previous conversations. Treat this as a new one.
Yeah. Can we take a new situation?
Mm.
Someone's going for a job.
Yeah.
They want to understand on every step of the way, like where shouldn't I use AI?
Yeah.
Let's start with CV.
Mm.
Should I build my CV from scratch with AI or should I use AI to just enhance my existing CV?
I mean, I would probably give it if I already have one. I would give it my CV and ask it to critique it, and give it the job title of the role, like the
Nice.
role I'm going for, the person who I'm going to speak to and who's hiring me. Um, give it the context of the company, and then ask it to critique it. What's missing? What's good? What's strong? What's weak? Because I want to understand that. Again, I don't want you just to make me a new version.
Yeah.
I want to understand the logic behind it
Yeah.
because then I'm going to be in a conversation. And it's great if my CV is really strong on paper, but if I haven't understood what makes that strong, I'm not going to perform better in an interview. So
Yeah.
already I even want to be thinking about how am I going to show myself the best, not just on paper, but in real life.
Yeah, great. And when it comes to, say, the interviewer said, record a 1 minute video answering this question.
Mm.
What's the boundaries? Would you use
Oh, good
AI to
question.
like help you answer the question?
Interesting. This is where I get stubborn. I
Mm,
still have a stubborn nature, and I
okay.
get a bit like, I would want to answer the question myself first. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen things where people have like AI up when they're in a live interview, and
I,
then
I think the risk is if there's 400 applicants and they all use AI and just copy and paste the question in,
mm,
you're gonna hear very similar responses. It's
yeah,
very
yeah,
obvious who typed it into AI.
I think so.
So I agree with you. I think you need to be original in that context, or
Yeah,
you record 2 or 3 answers and get AI to review it based on
yeah,
them
sure.
being the role of the interviewer at this company with these values, and just get feedback on it rather than AI giving you a script.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I do also want to be real that AI still isn't the best at things.
Yeah,
Like it's good, but I rarely look at an answer AI gives me and think that's the best.
I agree.
And so actually, even if you take an AI script, sometimes it also depends how your brain works. For some people, you know what? I This is what we should be teaching in schools. This is what I would love to see on the curriculum. Apparently, they are doing it a little bit. I want to see it more. Helping people understand how their brains work and how they learn.
Mm,
So, what would be really helpful to me is to understand about myself. Am I someone who actually a blank sheet of paper is brilliant for me to come up with ideas? And so, when I get the question, I'm immediately going to find it easy to spark. And that's where my creativity and my best ideas are going to come from. Some people that works. Actually, for lots of people, that feels really overwhelming, feels really nerve wracking. They
mm-hmm,
might delay it, they might procrastinate, they might not do the best work.
mm-hmm.
So, maybe what I need is AI to help me have a conversation because actually, I think better out loud. Or maybe it's I need it to give me a start of 10 for me to critique
Yeah,
because that's going to help. So, what I want to be doing is trying to use it as a tool to, yes, give a better answer, but also to think better.
yeah.
That's
I
what I
love
want to be
that.
doing with it.
Yeah, I love that. I
Mm,
agree, and I think it's the other time is skill, critical thinking,
mm.
and decision making. Like, how can I think better? How can I like explore my thinking paths rather than always lead me to a narrow answer?
This, for me, is the challenge of AI. How are we not allowing it to completely rot our brains? We are allowing it to make us the best versions of ourselves with
Yeah.
better brains. That's really hard. That is a challenge. But I
Mm.
think if we don't embrace it, everything's going to rot.
I think work has a real role to play as an educator here as well. We talk a lot about
Mm.
school, but there's so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
of us in work,
Yeah.
and work's such an environment that should be able to teach and
Mm.
educate us and take us on this journey that we're talking about on how do we think better, how do we make better decisions, how can we be more strategic?
I was talking to someone in a bank recently, and they were talking about they've rolled out Microsoft Copilot, as lots of companies have, and they were saying they're kind of tending to see a pattern. Some people still aren't using it at all; they're not doing well. Some people, the vast majority of people, are just using it to do their job.
Mm.
And what managers and leaders are starting to say to me is, there comes a point where it's so obvious that I'm getting
Yeah.
the answer to the question I gave you as you put it into ChatGPT, and I'm getting the exact you're copy and pasting the answer. And at the point where there is no level of human intervention needed, you've either proven your role is redundant, or you're just not. You're being either scared or lazy to add the value on top.
You see, and that value on top, I think, is sometimes as well.
Mm.
People are sleeping on the fact that they have this rich bank of human stories,
Mm.
especially within the workplace. So
100%.
if, you know, I talk to HR leaders all the time, like if you're shaping learning experiences, think through the lens of the CEO and your strategy. What are we trying to achieve?
Mm.
What capabilities and skills do our leaders have today? What are they going to need in order to achieve that thing and take people in this direction?
100%.
And actually, what stories can I bring around Sarah and Sally and Brian and all
Mm.
these leaders in the company to enhance the stories so people connect with it emotionally? And AI can't give you that. It can give you some of, all right, think through these questions and lenses of the CEO and the leader and the strategy, but it can't give you the human stories.
No.
So we need to understand the boundaries on where we're meant to be co-pilot, which means we were both
Mm.
meant to be flying this plane, which means we're both meant to be adding value, rather than being reliant on all of the value coming from AI, which is almost like the step one of people's journey with AI at work at the moment.
I think connected to that, let's not downplay enjoyment. Like, how am I making this an enjoyable process.
Yeah. We
Because
underrate that, isn't
we
it? Fun.
do. And actually, if you think about, I was thinking about this a lot with my team, right? They're great at their jobs, like really great. And they're all actively using AI. They're all going and finding new AI tools. Like, I don't even have to be telling them. They're all teaching me stuff about AI. Brilliant. And I would not employ them if they were not capable and doing great work, just
Of course.
obviously. But they're really fun to work with. And you've got to be a bit careful with this. You don't just make a cult of your own personality, and you don't just hire people that are like you or that
Yeah,
can
but
be a kind of.
you wouldn't enjoy the people you work with.
But it's got to be a fun process. And
Mm.
part of the reason I love when we work together is I always come away from the work we've done feeling
Yeah.
inspired,
Yeah,
excited,
likewise.
buzzing. And I think genuinely as humans, we are wired to get that from humans.
Yeah,
We're not wired to get that from machines in the same way.
I agree.
So that is again a way you can stand out. How can you make this feel more fun, feel
Yeah.
more enjoyable, feel more wholesome or inspiring or interesting?
Mm. Can't outsource fun and enjoyment.
No, you really can't. So, I mean, we've touched on some prompts, we've touched on some skills, but I think they're quite broad skills. So, as we come to journaling prompts and wrapping up the episode, what do we think are important? What do we think are important things that people could be tangibly doing to feel like maybe they have a bit more control, because it does all feel quite existential doom and gloom? And I'm not sure I've helped that with some of my reflections, but I feel that. So what could people like me be doing practically to feel more in control and to nurture both the skills around AI that they need and also the skills that we believe are never going to be replaced by machines?
At first, you want to give us a pat on the back because we didn't talk about AI and job displacement really. We were talking about how to use it,
Mm.
timeless skills alongside it. So I feel like we were really positive actually in our conversation today about AI, where it's usually just such doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And I think for those who are listening to this who don't know where to start with AI, um, I think we should probably create a prompt around, okay, how to get started.
Yeah, nice.
And for those who are using I think we should create a prompt around critical thinking so that you're not
Mm.
just racing to answer the quickest, easiest answer.
Yeah, love it. Any ideas?
For the latter one, I have an
Yeah.
idea. I think with any problem or job that you want to do in AI,
Yeah.
um, find two other methods of solving that problem without AI.
Ooh, interesting.
Just so that you can compare and contrast, and at least you do the thinking just by going through the process of looking at those two other methods.
And I think connected to that, if you are already actively using AI a lot, look at how you're using it and whether it's actually serving you in the way. So I noticed this the other day. As someone with ADHD, what would happen is I'd put a task into Claude. It would start working and it would take a few minutes to do the task I've set, right? Because it is genuinely working at creating slides or whatever. It's not a long time. So I would go away and start doing something else. And then I'd come back and check it 5 minutes later. And what that started to mean was I was having incredibly bitty work.
Mm.
And also, I was trying to then almost operate at the amount I'd already invested in it. So it was, I spent 2 minutes on it, spent 5 minutes on it. So I'll spend a quick amount of time checking it. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
then going in and doing a deep review because I was almost in this pattern of working in these super short stints.
Yeah.
That doesn't actually work very well for me. My brain is not working well. My critical thinking is dampened. My inspiration is dampened. Everything is dampened. So one of the things I'm actively looking at, how can I do, is I still want to use it, but what would that path look like that means that I'm not jumping task to task in a way that is really actually increasing my switching cost at a really unhelpful level? How am I checking it in a better way so that I'm not defaulting to just speed and
Yeah.
ease?
And like as you said, that well,
Mm.
sharing that experience and that prompt, it made me think of pre-work before AI.
Mm.
And I think sometimes before even writing a prompt, we need to go and do research.
Yeah.
So that budget and prompts that we gave today on the call, on the podcast, we could have said actually go into YouTube and find personal budgeting like tutorials. Go
Yeah,
into
true.
Instagram and find a few examples. Go into TikTok and find a few
Mm.
examples. And now bring together the research that you found and ask AI to create you a personal budget and thing based on the best of what you found.
And again, you're right. You'll actually do a better prompt because suddenly you'll have the context to be able to say, "I don't like this. I liked this.
Yeah.
This helps." Such a good
The
point.
pre-work is the work.
You're so right, and it's got your brain thinking, and you
Yeah.
actually, again, you're, and I often,
So use that as a last step, not just the first step.
and you're actually right. The best work I've done with AI, we wrote a proposal for some work together, and I used AI to draft it up. But you and I had voice noted back and forth about the design. So actually, when I prompted it, we'd answered all the design questions.
That was a very strong proposal, actually.
It was a brilliant proposal because
Yeah.
we'd done the thinking.
Yeah.
And
You
actually,
could see that had come
you
through.
really could. And because we headed off all the things that we knew might break in that program,
Yeah.
it was just writing up and summarizing, and it's good at that.
So true.
Okay, and for someone who has not started yet, what would be a good prompt? Oh, okay, you go.
No, I'm listening.
So I think maybe for the next 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
every time you do something that you don't enjoy, that feels like it's not giving you energy, it's not actually using the best of you, but you have a question of, do I have to be doing this? Should I be doing this? Do I want to be doing this? And it's not super manual, so sadly I'm not talking about washing the dishes, but there's a little bit of kind of knowledge work in there,
Yeah.
a little bit of thinking that you think, I don't have the headspace for this now, I don't have the time for this now, I don't want to be doing this now, I now feel worse after doing it. Just write it down. And then actually start to have a think about what one of those things. If I picked one task and I played with AI to see if it could help, what would be the task that would make me feel best, that would reduce my anxiety, that would save my time, and what am I going to give it to that's a nice thing, not just another, I now have to be more productive.
Yeah, I like that. I thought you were gonna go down the road of asking AI, how can I make this more fun? And I've got a
I
book
do
called
like that.
Game Storming and a few books like that that just make activities more fun.
I love that. I need to read Game Storming. Okay.
Maybe we'll touch on it in a future episode.
Book recommendations galore and lots of prompts. Let us know as well as you start to play with AI what you like, what questions you have, and we can always do follow-up content and share some more tips if they're helpful.
Absolutely.